Hey, I'm Jeff, and I make music with my brother.
Hi, I'm Jonathan, and I also make music with my brother.
Together, we are Ekko and Sidetrack, and we make music that sounds like this.
And this.
And even this. This podcast is about music, creativity, and everything in between.
Welcome to A Band Apart with Ekko and Sidetrack. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Short Order Burger Co. Use the code word RUOK at checkout when you're in store for 10% off your entire order. That again is the code word RUOK for 10% off in store at either the Hay Street or Fremantle store. Enjoy the delicious burger. Yo.
Jonathan, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Well, I have a statement or a series of statements, and then I wanted to ask you a question. Recently I listened to a podcast with our mate Subfocus in it. Mm-hmm. You recommended it to me. Mm-hmm. It's the Willie Joy podcast back to back. The guest is Subfocus, the drum and bass producer. And it's a really interesting chat. And one particularly interesting part I found was when Nick talked about music taste and how when he was younger, it was more difficult to have a broader music taste, particularly in dance music, because if you wanted to own music, you literally had to buy the record. So not only was your physical space limited for storage and stuff as you bought CDs and stuff, but more likely your monetary, your ability to spend the money on so many things was limited. So you bought a CD or you bought an album, or you even bought a record single, and that was all you listened to for that short period of time. And I found that really interesting. A better word than interesting, would be that I found it relatable.
Yeah.
And it's something I hadn't thought about in ages. But with that in mind, I wanted to ask you about your musical taste, where it came from, and how you think it's changed over time. And then maybe you can speak to how you think it's changed in the world of Spotify, where you have all the world's music at your fingertips.
Okay.
I just sprung that on you.
What I think of when I hear that is I used to listen to the radio when I woke up. I remember listening to 92.9. I had an old clock radio. You might remember the black one.
That clock radio, fun fact, was used at one point by all the Hanson brothers. It was Ben's originally.
Yeah.
I then used it.
And then it became mine.
Yeah.
So I would, when I was younger, wake up and turn on the radio.
Well, you could wake up to the radio. That was your alarm.
That was the alarm.
Yeah.
And it would be, I can't remember who was on 92.9 before these people, but it was Zara, Bernie, and Troy. Remember Bernie? I think it was Bernie. He did prank calls and stuff.
Yeah, and that before that was Gary Shannon and stuff.
Yeah, Gary Shannon.
There's some real Perth throwbacks.
But I would listen to that, and then in between hear
70s, 80s, and 90s music.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember so I would kind of listen to small bits of music every morning. The first decision I made to listen to music that I can remember,
actively choosing
music was, and even then I was so influenced by you and Ben that it would have been punk. It would have been things like Blink-182, Green Day. I remember taking Ben's Nimrod by Green Day, CD.
Yep.
And playing it in my room and reading the lyrics and going through the front fold out.
Yep.
And then that kind of turning into drumming and wanting to drum to punk. So I would then start drumming to Melancholy and Blink, MXPX, Yellow Card, that type of stuff. I feel like
you put that on your CD. We had that on CDs, or that was the era of burning CDs.
Yeah, so we had all those on CDs, and basically what I would do to drum to them is I'd put them on a portable CD player, wear headphones, turn it up really fucking loud, and drum. Before that, I can't really remember actively listening to music. It was the music that mum and dad played in the house. Paul Simon, Pink Floyd, Leonard Cohen, the Eagles.
Jackson, Brown, Jerry Rafferty.
Yeah. And like, I remember
Hendrix.
I liked that music, but I didn't actively seek out any of that stuff.
It was just a soundtrack to your life.
It was the soundtrack to my life.
So how old are you at this point as well? Like 11 when you're doing this drumming stuff? 10?
I feel like I was learning piano when I was in year 4. The Darren years, as I like to refer to them.
Mm-hmm. Darren being a music teacher.
And possible pedophile.
Allegedly.
No, he wasn't a pedophile, but he did used to spray me with a water bottle and keep me wet, which is kind of weird.
Creepy enough.
It is kind of weird.
It's funny now, but you're the one that got away.
So I learned piano for 2 years, maybe 3 years. I was already drumming in year 7 because I remember bringing my drum kit to school and doing like a performance. And I must have been drumming for 2 years before that. So like maybe like year 5, 6. Year 5 and 6, I want to say.
So yeah, 10, 11.
10, 11. And I think I listened to punk, predominantly punk, or like rock, up until I started listening to drum and bass.
So your teenage years, those pretty formative years, was like exposure to punk rock, really?
Predominantly punk. Like I remember listening to, the first time I heard Radiohead was in year 10 in art class. That was the same with Tool, same with Mars Volta. I remember I went through like a Mars Volta stage.
And you got quite into Muse as well.
I got quite into Muse. But yeah, it was predominantly punk and rock until drum and bass. And then it was heavily into drum and bass. 17, 18, 19, 20. And it's only recently that I've kind of started actively listening to other genres of music much more. Like I don't really listen to drum and bass now for enjoyment. I listen to modern classical music, house, film scores, or like I've been listening to a lot of funk lately.
Like?
Fuck, I can't remember his name.
George Clinton?
Maybe George Clinton?
Yeah, Isley Brothers.
Earth, Wind and Fire.
Earth, Wind and Fire, big tunes.
And kind of changing my focus on what I listen to. And that's 100% due to the ease of Spotify.
Yeah, so if I can just wind it back.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first CD you bought and you felt you had ownership on? That was yours?
I remember buying Home from Home.
By Millencolin?
By Millencolin.
Yep.
But that must have been when I was...
You would have been...
10 or 11, maybe 12.
Maybe you would have been year 8, maybe?
But I remember going to Whitford's, which is a shopping centre near our home, and going to the Sanity that was at one end and going in there and buying it. Yeah, that... I remember you bought Take Off Your Pants and Jacket by Blink-182.
Mm-hmm.
And just before you went on ski trip,
and
you listened to it, and as soon as I was in the car to pick you up, and as soon as you got back, I hassled you in the car and was like, "Can I listen to it?"
Yeah.
And I listened to it
on the
drive on the drive home
that I'd been listening to.
That you'd been listening to it on.
Yeah. That's still an iconic moment for me with the start of that album, like Anthem Part 2. I put my Discman on as we were taking off, like taxi around, line up on the runway, and then you hear that start of the song. I just made it sound like a but it's like very like
It's a snare roll. It's
big,
impactful.
It's impactful. That as we start accelerating down the runway.
What a start to the fun trip as well.
And everyone was like yelling and like having fun. And I was just like, I'm putting on my goddamn headphones and listening to this album, which I'd heard briefly on Triple J because it blew my mind that they, as a feature album, they'd play all the songs off it, not just the singles, whatever. But again, back to the question. Do you think you relate to music differently now than you did then? And not just like as a kid or as a professional musician now or something, but like, do you think owning music is important?
Yes, because it feels more like it's yours. I had a weird relationship with music for a long time.
Because of the fact you got sprayed by the piano teacher. Sorry.
There's only so much you can get sprayed in the face by lukewarm water by an older, possibly Malay man. No, it was, I just didn't listen to it that much. I loved music, but for some reason there was a blockage in me that I wouldn't listen to it. People would say, like, people would drive and like listen to music really loud, and I wouldn't love loud music in cars.
I still hate loud music in cars, man.
And so I just wouldn't listen to, I would listen to music in really specific times, but every time I did, it was so impactful. I would get so emotional and respond to it so strongly, but it was always in like these odd moments. And then after, it must have been like the first year of uni when I had an iPod, an early iPod, and I would get a bus and a train to uni, and that was the first time I kind of listened to music for a long period of time, an hour every day. And I started to enjoy it more, and it became a bit more of a escape. I don't know if just listening to music was an escape for me when I was a teenager. I think drumming was an escape for me when I was a teenager. I would drum for long periods of time, listening to the music. But I don't think I kind of sat in my room listening to music, while just sitting there. I know that when you were a teen, you would listen to music and draw.
I'd listen to music and draw.
And that was your kind of escape.
Even from primary school, man. Like as young as year 4.
Music was like the secondary thing. It was very rarely just you'd sat down and listened to music.
I think it was always, I'd loved wearing headphones. I've always bought headphones. I've always owned lots of pairs of headphones.
Yeah.
And so because I wanted to, plug in my headphone jack and like have the music surround me while I focused on my thing. I think it helped me focus.
Absolutely.
But not for, I can't listen to music with lyrics if I've got to write words.
No.
But if I'm drawing, I can just like get lost in the noise, I suppose. It's interesting you talk about escapism because I think that's what music offers. But now I think to talk a little bit more about my experience, I think I felt like I was a part of a club by having certain kinds of music. I can remember talking to people in high school and someone would be like, have you heard of this band? I just downloaded their thing, or I've just got one song off this Merc channel. It's so cool. And you listen to this like crappy MP3 and you're like, whoa, this is my new favorite band. They sound like this. That's how I heard about a band like Reset or Rufio or something. And you're like, whoa, I know about this band and no one else does. So it's this ownership thing. And I kind of, like, for me, punk was that thing. And so when I discovered drum and bass, I felt like it was very similar. Like, whoa, this is like something not many people know about. Like, and it's got the same energy as punk, and like, whoa, this is crazy. But at the time, I think because I was, just discovered drinking and drugs and all sorts of like partying, I just wasn't, I loved the music, but I wasn't as much of a train spotter. Like I didn't go and download I didn't buy I bought a few CDs and like would get mixes and stuff, but I also felt like I had to be secretive about it
Yeah.
because otherwise people would know that that's what music I listen to. And I think my parents would think that I take drugs, and I don't want them to know that I take drugs. So I've got to listen to that music with my headphones. Like, mum knocks on the door. What are you listening to? I could be listening to some gnarly punk, and that's fine. I could listen to that loud or, wearing headphones. But if she caught me listening to like dance music, it would be like, that could be a signal that
He's on drugs.
he's doing something
Yeah.
awry. So I think that became a bit more of a hidden thing. But I mean, I remember liking dance music when I was in like primary school or high school, but peripherally, like being like, that sounds really cool. Like hearing The Prodigy, or hearing, trying to think who else might have been in that era.
I remember hearing like early house. I guess it was kind of some kind of like rave, late 90s rave that was the pop music. I'm trying to think of an artist that's...
Oh, like that house, like fucking...
Rhythm of the Night? Or that would have been...
Yeah, those kinds of...
late 90s?
Yeah, that is absolutely. That kind of music. Big M1 piano vibes, or even things like Sandstorm and stuff like that. Like,
I remember hearing that
That was
stuff.
mainstream fucking music at the time.
I remember hearing that stuff, but never like... It was very surface level. There were only those few things that broke through, like The Prodigy.
Yeah, I remember hearing those things and being like, that's like super cheesy. Like, it's nowhere near as cool as drum and bass.
Yeah.
Like, drum and bass is all dark and like moody and that other stuff. Like, ugh. Like, even I didn't like much Four to the Floor stuff.
No, neither did I. I
wanted it to be.
I remember
rather than just.
I remember sometimes having such a fucking elitist attitude from drum and bass to like house music or something like that in my early 20s. And not so much elitist, but I would go to a club and they wouldn't obviously play drum and bass because they're not a drum and bass club, but I'd be like, fuck this place. This sucks. This music sucks. And being real down on house. And it's only after 25, must have been maybe like 23, 24, going to Europe and spending time in Berlin, or like just being exposed to more interesting house music and not having drum and bass, not only just going to drum and bass clubs, basically. And that's when I started liking it more. And now I would much prefer to go to a house club and hang out with my friends than go to a drum and bass club. Only that's because obviously now we work in drum and bass and it kind of feels like you're at work when you go to a drum and bass show.
They offer different things.
Yeah, they do offer different things.
That ownership of the music became something that was kind of important to me. And like, I wonder how all these kind of sounds of the music that I listen to influences the music I want to make.
Well, do you feel... I definitely think you lean into the pop, like the punk writing. Some of the progressions you tend to write are a bit more punk, derived a bit more from punk.
Well, I wouldn't even say punk. I think it was probably like year 11 in high school that I started listening to less punk and being exposed to things like the Beastie Boys and more hip hop stuff. And then after that, hearing more, because it was always the thing like you go to a drum and bass show and then you go to someone's house for like the like come down or whatever, and someone's playing like
Kick-ons.
Yeah.
Is what they refer to it now.
They do. No one comes down anymore. But and they'd be like, trying to think of a kind of music that would play, like it would be like Cafe Del Mar, kind of like house, like world music-y house.
Kind of relaxing music.
Yeah, and like...
See, we would just continue to mix.
Yeah,
but constantly just be smoking bongs.
And then that's... there was definitely weed smoking, but it was more like listening to that kind of stuff, or like early, maybe Bonobo, but Bonobo wasn't on my radar, but it was that kind of sound.
Yeah.
And then I got, around that era as well, starting getting into like hip hop, more like DJ Shadow and Cut Chemist and the beat makers,
Yeah.
like stuff on Stone's Throw, Jay Dilla, like all of a sudden that door opened and then music just got a lot wider
Yeah.
because all those guys were referencing other pieces of music or sampling. And then I think the music that I make, Air, like Moon Safari would be a classic thing to play at, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I wonder.
I think my
Sorry. Yeah, you go on.
noises that I want to make might have like some genealogy in like that very pop punk of that 2000s era or late 90s 2000s era, but then it's like infused with scratchy textures of found sounds and like musical elements,
Like organic sampled
yeah,
sounding stuff.
and so like yeah, but then that's all mashed in with like me being into like darker drum and bass, like not knowing what drum and bass was. I probably liked Bad Company and fucking Conflict and shit when I was younger. Just didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And then when I started knowing tune names, it was like, oh, I think I know. Like Johnny talks about this guy, high con, and you're like high contrast, and I'm like, yeah, that guy, like, yeah, like that. Then the Hospital sound, and which is more musical, and then obviously Pendulum, always ever present, and like I don't know. It's interesting what makes up your musical DNA.
Another band that was impactful for my music taste was Postal Service. The Postal Service.
Yeah.
Because it was the lead singer from Death Cab for Cutie, which was like a pop, punk,
indie
indie rock kind of.
One of those great crossover bands of that era.
Yeah. And then he was doing something with a producer, and it was very like down-tempo electronic.
And how did it work? How did they get their name?
I can't remember.
With the name Postal Service, didn't they trade music through the Postal Service? I believe I'm pretty sure that's how it worked. Like you send me vocals, I'll send you beats kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe that's how it worked.
I could be completely wrong.
Let's say that's how it worked because that sounds cool. It'll be on their Wikipedia. And I think listening to that in year, I want to say the tail end of year 12, so 2006, then got me to start listening to things like Air. Because I remember I would listen to Moon Safari every time I would walk to work. I was working at a restaurant on the coast and I would walk from my house down there. It'd be like a 15, 20-minute walk. And I would always listen to Moon Safari on that walk, having come home at 6 a.m. to go to work at 7. And that was like a pivotal, emotional moment. I don't know, like coming down. Maybe it was raining, and then it was the buffer between the late night partying and the busyness of service. It was like this moment where I would be by myself, sometimes walking across the park with headphones on, the calm before the storm of work. And I don't know how I found Air.
I had a CD I bought in Thailand in 2004, and it was a pirated CD, but it had the print on it
of Moon Safari.
Yeah, Moon Safari.
Maybe that's
the one.
Where.
So
Again,
it would have been around the house.
I think my musical taste was so influenced by yours, especially when we were younger. And maybe now I think it's probably where our musical tastes have been the most different.
Yeah, for sure. But then again, you'll send me something and I'm like, this is sick. And I'll send you something and you'll be like, this is great. Like, whoa, like, which is really cool. I love sharing new music with people. And quick plug for our playlist on Spotify. It's Ekko and Sidetrack handpicked. If you haven't listened to it, it's new music that we're feeling. Mostly
drum and bass, but we also sneak in a couple of non-drum and bass tunes in there as well.
Yeah, but we update it every fortnight, and you can get
on a Tuesday.
Get yourself a little taste. Sorry, you were going to say something.
You spoke early on about how maybe Spotify or other streaming services has changed the exposure of people to music
and the ownership of
and the ownership of music. Because, Nick speaks about going to buy records and listening to records.
And which was also an integral thing for us. Like
Yeah.
going and buying a record meant that you had the song. And, what's that song that I hear in the nightclub? Oh, it's this song. And then you'd go and buy it, or you'd ask the guy at the record store, is this song? He's like, man, that's not going to be out for ages. And then you'd eventually find it, or you'd discover music. It was back to that discovering music, which is, I loved. Like, you would go to the record store, and we'd walk home, we'd catch the train, and we'd to the city, and we'd have records on the way home. You're like, man, I can't wait to get home and mix. And you only had 10 records, and you just mix those same 10 records over and
that's
over.
when playing B-sides was a thing.
Yeah.
Because you'd have to mix the B-side so you can have more songs.
Yeah.
And like, it's interesting. I
appreciate those songs as well because you hear them over and over and over again.
But
you start to love them more.
Again, that goes hand in hand with DJing. Like, even now, I'm just thinking about all the songs that we own on record, it being so attached to DJing. Like, I am buying these things so I can DJ, rather than I am buying these things so I own the song. And then the DJing is a byproduct of the ownership, which I think is quite interesting. But yeah, so Nick talks about how precious something was because you'd buy it and then you'd listen to it. Now, I think, our nephew's 10. He has everything in the palm of his hand on his Spotify. He can go listen to whatever he wants. He can listen to the Beatles. He can listen to Pink Floyd. He can go listen to Sub Focus. He can go listen to whatever. And then quickly change from listening to that to a Minecraft song. There's probably less, what's the word for like special? It's probably less, it might be less impactful. I don't know if kids these days are going to experience that feeling of not waiting to listen to a CD till I got home, so I had to listen to it on a Discman in the car, or you being on the plane, being like, I'm going to listen to this CD,
saving it for a moment.
The saving of it for a moment, or like having these moments and experiences with songs that are special. It's not just another song in a playlist. It's a moment. It's you attach that song to.
Well, like you have with Air. Like
I have with Air.
Moon Safari became the soundtrack for that walk, and that's iconic. But if I ask you what was the song you listened to at the gym the other day, you'd be like,
I've got no idea.
No idea. I think it's interesting because playlists allow you to curate your own playlist. So a lot of people, I think, have the soundtracks to their lives. They got their playlist that they put on, and I love hearing this song. So there is a lot of repetitive listening, and there is a lot of ownership in that regard.
Yeah.
But the way I use Spotify, I don't think is like that. I use Spotify like it's like a giant record collection.
Yeah.
And I literally walk down the aisle, and I'm like, man, Paul Simon Graceland. That's what I want to listen to right now.
Yeah.
And it goes, or a jukebox, the world's biggest jukebox. And it goes, and pulls it out. And that's what I listen to. And I often listen to a record start to finish.
Do you remember when Leo was, like the kids, our niece and nephews, they were over here and we were playing music for them?
Yeah.
On Spotify. And these songs were quite short because I think they were like Minecraft pop songs, but a song would go for like a minute and a half, and then they'd ask for the next one. It'd be like, next one. I
don't like this one. Put on the next one.
Put on the next one. When we were kids, when we were their age, probably, we would have been Leo's age, listening to CDs. Sometimes we would skip songs if maybe we didn't like them, but you'd listen to the whole song. Or if we were listening to, if Dad had a record on, We would never be like, skip this song.
The concept of skipping was not.
You would have to listen to it.
Well, tapes, man, it was hard to skip on a tape. You just you listen to it, which is how the fifth song on a record can become, or the fifth song on a CD can become your favorite song.
Yeah.
Something I recently heard about records is like the way you build a record is different to how you build a CD in song structure, as in like ordering of your songs. Because on a CD, well, let me go back. On a record, you've got two sides. So you've got firstly two moments you get to have. You get like starter side A, starter side B. Plus you get two more moments of how you want to end each side. So you're literally like, creating 4 definitive moments in the listening experience.
Mm-hmm.
And when it came to CDs, it was just like, put your best songs first.
Yeah.
And now on Spotify, it's like, we're going to give you one song only. And then I hope you like it because I'm going to give you another song in like 4 more weeks.
Yeah.
It's changed the listening experience. Like there's almost no such thing as like a deep cut anymore. It's like, how do you discover the 12th song on an album if all you ever do is listen to the first 8 and then that's the end of your walk?
Yeah.
Because you only have listened to 25 minutes.
You have to be more active. You have to be just like someone who, if you're an active music listener 20 years ago, you would go and buy CDs and try things out and listen to them. If you're an inactive music listener, you'd just listen to the radio. You'd be like, whatever.
Passive.
So now a passive listener would just allow a playlist to start, or the radio to start playing after a few songs, as in the radio on Spotify. But an active listener has to now go, no, I want to listen to the whole album. You know how sometimes you'll start a song on an artist and it'll play 2 songs and then it's like, I'm just going to start suggesting a radio. And now you go on to Paul Simon radio or whatever's radio. Now, being an active listener is all about grabbing your phone and selecting that you want to play that album through. And like you said, like going to find an album you want to listen to.
Yeah, and even, talk about low risk listening. Previously you'd hear one song off an album and you'd go and spend $30 on a CD.
Yeah.
Now you can just be like, dude, I've never heard this record before, and I'm just going to press play.
Yeah.
And like, guess what? You might not like it, but that's okay because it's new and that's exciting.
Yeah.
It's like hearing Queens of the Stone Age for the first time. You're like, whoa, this is sick. I really like this. Then you hear the next album and you're like, this is not as good as Songs for the Deaf or whatever. I don't like this. And then you're like, well, no, actually, I really like this album because I've listened to it a few times. I think the repeat listen is quite important because you shouldn't love it from the first play.
It should grow on you.
Yeah.
And you should feel different about it. A good album, you should always feel different, have a different kind of emotional response and feel differently about it every time you listen to it.
If you make up your mind about something too quickly, then it's almost like you're not giving it a chance. And I feel like a lot of music, a lot of art in general is a bit like that.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've heard it. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah. Dismissed.
I gave it one listen. Yeah, it's fine. Are you a fan of that band? Yeah, I love those guys.
Listen to it more.
I just can't wait till they put out a new thing. Whoa.
Yeah.
They just spent 3 years building an album or a body of work, and now you just want something new.
It's like people making comments about movies when they don't fully watch the movie. They're looking at their phone half the time.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, that was okay. And you're like, well, you were on Instagram the whole time.
Yeah.
You weren't here.
Or you paused it 7 times.
Yeah. I had another memory come up. For some reason, I remember you buying a tape of MXPX on a long drive.
Life in general.
Yep. Possibly when we drove to Brisbane.
Yeah, it could have been any of those Hanson road trips.
98.
Could be.
Maybe. And then I'm just trying to think of the earliest thing. And then I can think of, there was a Bush tape.
Yeah, there would have been a Bush CD, 16 Stone, the one with glycerine on it.
Glycerine is, I remember listening to Glycerine.
I bought that on CD.
And that I thought it was funny that the name of the band was Bush. Yeah. But that's got to be like 97?
Yeah, around that era.
Trying to
And
just
I remember
get in there as...
Ben had, or maybe Dad bought What's the Story Morning Glory, like Oasis.
I reckon Ben did.
Ben did, and ended up in Dad's collection or whatever. And
Yeah.
then there was like
That's such
Ben-
a good album.
Ben was into like Blur a bit there as well. Like
Yeah.
all these kinds of moments. Like, yeah, I'm very appreciative that we had an interesting musical palette to choose from, and almost that I didn't get into dance music till later. Like in some weird way, like I like where I came from. It's not like I was all pop, and then I just like after high school I was like, I like this kind of different music.
Yeah.
It's like it was a slow burn to get me there, and also being like liking punk is pretty underground and anti-establishment to start with, so it sets you up pretty well to embrace other music of that ilk as you go forward. That said, I still iconically remember listening to the radio probably in year 4, and I was Tokyo Ghetto Pussy. I kiss your lips and close my eyes. Like it's a happy hardcore song.
Yeah.
That was playing, and I was just like dancing in my room, and Ben walked in and just laughed at me, and I was like, oh, I feel embarrassed.
Maybe that's why you wanted to keep listening to drum and bass as a secret.
Maybe.
You were ashamed.
Maybe. But yeah, these iconic musical moments. Fun to think about. And also like what is something that you would want to go back and listen to that you haven't listened to in years? And it doesn't have to be like 30 years or something.
I had I haven't listened to Moon Safari in a while. I would, when I was in the UK, I think I got quite nostalgic, especially in the tail end. So like early January this year, when I was working by myself, I would often put on Parachutes by Coldplay. Is that their first album?
Potentially. You were always more into Coldplay. I like Coldplay.
Yeah.
I feel like I should go and listen to more Coldplay.
Yeah, like I listened to Parachutes and I listened to Home from Home, Melancholy.
I haven't listened to Melancholy in ages.
And Penny Bridge Pioneers.
I might listen to Life on a Plate at the gym.
And like...
That was an iconic moment. Christian Frarud played me Bullion for the first time.
I still remember watching the Melancholy tour video.
The video, man. The VHS that I had that some fucker stole from me.
And I used to love watching that. And I loved the scene when they played Bullion at the college campus.
Yeah.
And that's the first time when watching that from the side view, and I saw what his foot was doing when he was doing, like the drummer was doing a fast kick.
Yeah.
That's how I learned how to do a fast kick, because I saw what it looked like, how he was levering it, and I was like, I just got to do that.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's so cool.
That must have been like 99, 2000.
Yeah, around that era.
Bit before.
Yeah.
I listened to those, anyway, I listened to those songs when I was in the kitchen, and I was singing to the words. And I don't listen to vocals that much. I don't really remember words, but somewhere in the file, in my hard drive, my personal hard drive of my brain, they just came out. And I was singing them, and I felt true nostalgia.
That's beautiful.
For it. What I would go back and listen to now, though, Air, Moon Safari, or maybe some Mars Volta. Depends what I'm doing.
Interesting you say it depends what I'm doing. Some people would be like very dependent on what they're doing. Some people just want like noise, or they like, again, that active listening thing. I think that's in some weird way how Spotify's algorithm just feeds people. Like, people just want background music now. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want anything too challenging. Just give me something that like will work well in the workplace or the cafe, or I can listen to in the background.
And
It's like,
lo-fi, hip-hop.
yeah,
Most popular thing on Spotify, I think. Lo-fi, hip-hop playlists. People put in the background for study. It's got a beat to it. It's just good background music. Great question, by the way.
Thanks for sharing your musical journey and inspiring me. And it's lovely to think, as I tinkered on the piano last night, I was thinking of the textures that I kind of wanted, and I was like, I want it to sound like Air and Tourist and John Hopkins. Like, that's what I like. And I'm like, oh, okay, if I wind that back in my head, where does that come from? That's like textures in a Pink Floyd record, or Bonobo, and even DJ Shadow. And it's like, oh yeah, this is the musical inspiration I'm pulling from. They're the files that I've pulled out of my hard drive, and they're the things I'm laying out on the floor and being like, oh, I want to take a little bit of you. I want to, yeah.
Like it's like tapping into a musical history.
Yeah.
Getting the thing finding the thing that inspires you, and then you find the thing that inspired them, and then you find the thing that inspired them. It's like watching you watch like a Martin Scorsese film from 2015, and you watch an Alfred Hitchcock film in 1960, and you're like, that's Scorsese was inspired by Hitchcock, and then who inspired Hitchcock? And you go back further.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's interesting to see the development and evolution of ideas.
And the lineage of it.
Yeah, the lineage of an idea.
Yeah. Thanks, Johnny. Thanks for chatting to me today.
Thank you.
I love you, and we love you, dear listener. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with your friends and family, and for all you listening out there, wherever you are in the world, thank you. Big shout out to our friend Ashley Lowe as well. She told me the other day that she listens to the podcast.
Fantastic. Hey, Ash.
Thanks, guys. We'll chat to you next week.
Lots of love. Thanks for listening to this week's podcast. Make sure you subscribe to us on your podcast app and keep up to date with all new episodes. They're going to be coming out once a week. We are Ekko and Sidetrack on Facebook and Instagram. On Twitter, we are Ekko Sidetrack. Go listen to our music on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, YouTube, or wherever your ears consume happiness. Lots of love, people.